Thank you for joining LinkedIn Live. I appreciate all of you for joining me today. Today's topic is mastering the art of setting boundaries and saying no. This is going to be coming from a perspective of being able to maintain relationships, maintain professional conversations so that setting a boundary or a no doesn't turn into an argument or turning into basically ruining great relationships that you have with people in your personal and your professional life. So anybody on the line, if you think that this live stream can help somebody, please send it to them. And I'd love this for it to be very interactive. So if you have any questions, comments, examples that you'd like me to go over in these the next 20 minutes, feel free to leave them below. So let's get started. So first and foremost, when it comes to saying no and setting boundaries, we have to ask ourselves first, are we saying no or setting a boundary because this request or this recommendation that this person is giving to us is something that we feel uncomfortable about? Could this be an opportunity for you to personally grow? And I could just give an example. I remember early on in my career when I wasn't running a business, I was told that I was very introverted at the time in the office space. So I was told that I need to talk to more people, network more, don't just come to work and leave and, talk to people that talk to me, that I had to speak more often. And in that moment, a long time ago, I felt like setting a boundary by telling my boss at the time, I feel comfortable with being reserved. I feel comfortable with kind of staying to myself. But in hindsight, if I had set a boundary and told my boss at the time, no, I don't want to be more interactive with people in the office, that could have stunted my ability to grow. So when you're thinking about this boundary or this no that you have to say to somebody, ask yourself, are you doing this because you don't want to grow? Are you doing this because you don't want to step outside your comfort zone? Or to the next part, are you doing this because you have to? So let's take, for example, you're at work and you have a colleague and you are working on projects together. This person expects you to do a lot more of the work, and maybe they're taking the credit for it, or maybe they expect you to do most of the work and they don't really do anything because they've been there longer, etc. So I do believe that the best way to set a boundary is to first ask the person if they have time to speak. Oftentimes we want to get our boundaries or nose out, but the person's working or the person might be in a different headspace. So politely ask the person, what time is best for you? There's something that I'd like to share with you. Don't ever say, especially in a love relationship, we need to talk, because that already gives a lot of people the notion that there's going to be something serious. There could be an end of a friendship, a relationship, a business transaction, etc. So say, what time is best? There's something that I need to speak to you about. So they set the time, or maybe they tell you in the moment. And then you bring up the conversation as the example that we're bringing up. We've been working on projects together and I feel really excited about working with you. At the same time, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. I'm feeling very stressed out at times because I have a lot of more of the responsibility in these projects that we're doing together than it appears that you have. And I just want to know, what can we do to make it better? Now, this neutral question of what we can do to make it better gets the person out of defense mode and gets the person into, okay, you explained the situation, you told them that this is how it makes you feel, and what can we do, or what can you do, or what can we do as a team to make it better? And I think that these neutral questions are really good because this gives the person an opportunity to reflect on what they did to make you feel uncomfortable, why they're even at this point of having a conversation with you, and what they can do, or collaboratively, the both of you can do to work things out. When we're expressing these no's and these boundaries, we really also have to first, before we get and be in a very positive headspace, no expectations at all, because the person might not want to accept your no. They may not want to accept your boundary because this is who they are. So I do believe that coming with a compassion, coming with a tone of voice of kindness, even if you feel like you were violated or disrespected, it's really important to have a real neutral tone of voice bring kindness to the table as well. A lot of people do things because of conditioning from their adulthood, their childhood, their culture might be a certain way that's different from yours, and this is all they know. So when you're setting a no or setting a boundary, try not to look at it as an attack, you versus them, or I'm gonna stick it to them, I'm gonna get revenge in this conversation. Because truthfully, we both know that when we've had moments of high emotions and really feeling misunderstood, these no conversations can turn into arguments, physical situations, or just the person doesn't want to deal with you because you didn't set the tone before you even talk to them. So in your mind, you do have to believe that this person probably has never heard your no, or has never heard the boundary that you're going to set with them before. So kind of look at them as being like someone who, I know this is going to be hard, someone who's innocent in their patterns of behavior, and that this is an opportunity for you to set the record straight. Now, I do believe that depending on who you're speaking to, long conversations, turning it into a therapy session is definitely not the way to go. Nobody owes you a healing session except for a therapist or a mentor or a coach, and really coming to them and overspilling your emotions and your trauma and your experiences and pointing fingers at them can really confuse the purpose of why you're setting the boundary. So it's really important to, again, you come in with the mindset that this person probably doesn't even know what they're doing is wrong. And even if they do, this is who they are. This is not an opportunity for you to mentally judge them, because you might go into the conversation using these tips, but maybe in your mind, you're looking at them as the antagonist, the perpetrator, the suspect, the bad guy, or the bad girl. So even just having that thought before you set a boundary. Remember, everybody on the line, there's the verbal communication, there's the nonverbal communication, and there's your energy. And your thoughts can actually change your facial expressions. While you're saying something with kindness or compassion, your facial expression could be saying, I don't like this person. Your energy could be saying, oh, this is going to turn into a battle, so now I have to be defensive. So we really have to go very clear as far as not having any negative thoughts, even any expectations or outcomes of what's going to happen next. Now, what else can we add here? So also try to avoid shaming, avoid blaming, avoid anger, avoid attitude. A lot of the times, sometimes we think that if we serve our message to somebody with a certain tone of voice, certain words, certain language, or we kind of try to get into a victim mode mentality while we're setting that no or boundary, that is going to help the other person understand where we're coming from. And in some cases, it might backfire. And so really look at this as like a negotiation, a dance. All of my people who might be taking dancing classes, you're at your dance class and your dance teacher sets you up with a complete stranger or someone you came with. And so look at it as a dance versus I'm playing chess now. What move do I have to make with this boundary conversation? Or this is me versus them. So look at it as a dance. Look at it as I have no expectations on how this person is going to react to my no, to my boundary. I have no expectations of getting what I want, but hopefully this will turn into a win-win situation. And if it doesn't, I can't control how they act. And if it does, at least I did my best and we can move forward. Let's take a look here. Now, your mindset. We have to keep in mind that some people aren't going to get your boundary at first. This is for all my people on the line who are in love relationships. Maybe you want to set a boundary with your spouse, or maybe your children, your mom, your father, etc. Keep in mind that people are wired to believe a certain way, and that results in how they go about life, whether it's a good habit or a bad habit. And we have to keep in mind that when you set a boundary, your boss might not remember that boundary conversation you had, and they might slip up and make a mistake. It happens to the best of us. I'm trying to think of an example. Okay, so before I started working with my relaxation coach, Cecil McIntosh, all the people that have been noticing the previous events that I've been doing with him, I used to think that because I knew the answer to something, if a friend or a family member or even a stranger came to me and they were telling me their situation and they weren't necessarily asking for help, I used to think that I have to automatically get into, let me give them solutions, let me give them ideas, me refer them to a book, a podcast. So that was always my mindset back in the day, was when somebody comes to me with a problem, I have to solve the solution, even though they're not asking for it. And in a small percent of cases it pushed the other person away. So I'm just giving you an example. And then sometimes when people would set boundaries and say, hey, I didn't really ask for advice, Makita, I'm just here to talk to you, to tell you what's on my mind and release my feelings, and hopefully you can just be listening. And sometimes I wouldn't get it right. So I'm just using this example to say that sometimes people are doing things to you as well as others, and they are just hardwired to do it. When you set that boundary, they might not remember, they might keep doing it, but this is your responsibility as a leader, an adult, passionate person, whatever you call yourself, to keep setting those boundaries. Let's take, for example, you're in a love relationship and your partner has a very high temper. You've talked to them about how, you gave them the scenario, as we were saying earlier, about that moment where they had a bad temper. You told them that it made you feel anxious or nervous or scared, whatever, and then you set the boundary. So let's say a few days later, your love partner, or let's just say a boss, the anger comes out again. So instead of saying, you know what, forget this, I'm going to throw in the towel, I'm leaving this company, I'm going to throw in the towel, I'm divorcing this person, you might want to ask yourself, you might want to remind yourself actually that if they've been doing this for the past 20, 30, 40, 50, 80, whatever, however old they are, years of their life, you setting that one boundary doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stop them in their tracks the next time. So maybe in this particular situation, when your partner or a loved one or a colleague blows up on you, you just say, you know what, I'm going to go get a glass of water. I'm going to leave now. Right? So I'm not saying that as soon as the person blows up, you just walk out the door, you storm out. But even just walking away from very toxic conversations is setting a boundary. It doesn't always have to be verbal. So let's take another point here. Avoid getting angry if they repeat what you had asked them to not do, because again, this is all they know. So this is going to require a lot of mental and emotional discipline to know that in the process of setting boundaries with people, they're going to make mistakes. Sometimes they're going to get it right, sometimes they're not. But if you get angry, if you get frustrated, if you shame, blame, condemn, you're condescending, you're disrespectful, you start getting angry with them, this is not going to help the process. It's kind of like, I'm not saying human beings, it's kind of like a dog trainer. I'm not saying we're like animals. Some people do believe humans are animals. Everybody has their own concept, but think of like a dog or an animal trainer or a dolphin trainer. You go to your favorite zoo, the dolphin goes through the hoops, the dolphin does these backflips and then goes into the water at your local zoo. I'm pretty confident that when that zoo brought those dolphins into their zoo, that the dolphin wasn't doing that on the first try. It took time, not necessarily, I wouldn't call that setting a boundary, just saying that conditioning to kind of, I'm trying to use the best word, conditioning people to show them what it is that you need it can take time. So just keep in mind. And the last point I want to say here is accepting no and boundaries is a big part of relationships. This is a part of relationships, and everybody is not the best at setting boundaries. As I mentioned previously before, sometimes people just walk away. They don't want to deal with things. Then they're going from friendship to friendship, relationship to relationship, job to job, client to client, not realizing that boundaries, it's just a form of communication. It's not necessarily, my way or the highway. So we have to keep in mind that being able to say no is really a part of life. And doing anything opposite of what feels good to you is very harmful to your mental health. It's harmful to your reputation. There's this saying in America, I don't know who said this quote, but nice guys don't finish last, or being too nice is not always right. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be hardened or cold or calibrated and calculated in your connections with people, but it's really important that you allow the other person to understand who you are, what you accept and don't accept, and where you are at in life. When I say where you're at in life, maybe back in the day you were okay with people making arrangements with you or scheduling things with you, and then they flop and they disappear, and maybe you didn't talk about it again, or they didn't talk about it again, and you just allowed that to happen. But now you're realizing maybe you had a shift in your life and you realize that your time is just as important and valuable, and now you want to set that boundary that, yeah, back in the day I was okay with you flopping or us making plans and you disappearing or not canceling, but I actually had to cancel a couple of arrangements, a couple of outings with my family and friends to actually set that date and time, but I didn't hear from you. So it's definitely okay to set a boundary, even if were so used to not being able to do this before. The other thing I want to say on the bright side of setting boundaries is saying no, is it can actually bring you closer with the person you're setting boundary with. They might look at you as like a boss, for example. They might look at you as, how can I say it? They might look at you in a different light because maybe this person has authority and they're not used to getting boundaries from people. They're used to people always saying yes to them. So now they look at you in a different light. Or maybe you set a boundary with someone you love and care for deeply, and it allows you to come together and be much closer because they now understand where you're coming from. And as a result, they're understanding what works for you. And sometimes when you set a boundary with somebody, it's a ripple effect for that individual too. I always say we're not here to change anybody. We're not here to fix anyone unless they come for an advice and we are actually experienced with being able to do that. But sometimes you setting a boundary can actually help that person to know how to deal with other people. They might have other relationships that are ruined or tarnished or on the brink of ending, but you set this boundary and they have a light bulb moment in their head, realizing, wow, they didn't even realize that they were doing that to other people. And that's why maybe certain people don't ask them to go out anymore. Maybe that's why certain people don't answer their phone and calls anymore. Maybe that's why people just invite them to do this versus that, because they didn't realize that they always have a problem. So this is why I do believe that these conversations are very win-win and very, very healthy. And we have just a couple of more minutes. So I'm just going to do a recap of the points that I brought in. That before you set a boundary or say no to somebody, ask yourself, is this thing that's happening right now, could this help me to personally grow? Some examples are maybe your boss says that in order for you to get a promotion, you have to start doing public speaking events at internal or external opportunities, but you are frightened to public speak and now you want to set a boundary or say no. But could that public speaking suggestion actually help you to become the mayor you want to be, become the CEO, get the promotion? Another example is maybe you're asked to do new projects that you're feeling insecure about, and you want to set a boundary with your boss to ask yourself, does doing that project that you've never done before, could that help you elevate mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, career-wise? So, and if it's the opposite, and a situation where it's a toxic situation, where you're feeling unsafe, you're feeling uncomfortable, then of course, we need to start setting boundaries. And when you're about to set a boundary with somebody, ask them, are you free to chat? And if they say no, what date or what day and time is best for you? Because you never want to just spill out a boundary or a no after you had a conversation with somebody about this situation later on. And the best way to go about doing this is to briefly bring up the scenario, tell them how it made you feel, and then say with a neutral question, what can we do to make this right? How can we make this better? Then your tone of voice should be soft. You should come with compassion. You should have it in your mind, my goal is for this to come out to be a win-win outcome, but at the same, try to have no expectations because this person might be thrown off guard thinking they were doing this thing for you or to you to help you or to be a good friend or family member, and they might be caught off guard. So try not to have any expectation of how they're going to react, if they're going to understand, etc. Also try to avoid shaming, blaming, anger, attitude, pointing fingers, being condescending, being disrespectful, even articulating as if you're a victim. Try not to do these things because it could backfire and the person could feel insulted, feel as if they're being penalized, etc. And then we also have here, try to have the mindset too that if you set a boundary with somebody, they might not, maybe this is something they've been doing all their life, they might not remember it, they might keep doing it, but setting boundaries over and over again is kind of conditioning people to show them how to treat you. And that, again, they might not get it right the first time, but you just have to keep bringing it up, bringing it up, bringing it up until they finally get it. And then last but not least, expressing a no and setting boundaries is a big part of relationships, friendships, whether it's in your personal or career life. And this is something that's going to come up all the time. So instead of looking at it as a negative situation or why do I have to set a boundary, they should know. Remember, everybody, not everybody knows how you're feeling. Not everybody, there are certain different cultural differences too, where in certain cultures, this is accepted and in other cultures, it's not. So sometimes people don't even realize that they need to set a boundary with you because that's the way they were raised or that's a part of their culture to do X, Y, Z. So we just have to keep in mind that these forms of communication are a normal part of life. They will continue to come up, maybe if not with this person, someone else, but mastering the art of being able to do that so that it results in a win-win outcome, or you maintain a healthy relationship with this person versus, the friendship or the even business relationship or the work relationship ends, is something that we need to do our best to while we're setting boundaries and saying no. And for all my people on the line, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you want to go anonymous, feel free to connect with me. If you feel this live stream would help somebody, please send it to them. And if anybody is watching this in some way or fashion or form, follow me and I will be going live with other guests. I have some other topics coming up in the form of social work and trauma and dysfunctional families and how to kind of deal with that. I have some other guests coming up in the next week, so stay posted for my update on my next guest this coming Wednesday. Thanks so much for your time. Take care.